And I'm going to show you why it's really important to use the correct resin for a project like this. Now, I've seen a lot of people recently on different forums complaining about their resin and it going too hard, too quickly, and it flash curing, or it's creating lots of bubbles in the item and they want a clear item. Now, please, people, don't blame your resins. It's very, very, very rare that there is a problem with the resin. Normally, it is a problem with what you're using that resin for or how you're using that resin. I'm going to give you an example today. Now, I've got two spheres here. Unfortunately, they're not exactly the same, but what they are is the same size. Now, for this one, I'm going to use the T-Expert deep pour resin. And the great thing about this is you don't have to buy a lot. So if you don't do a lot of deep pouring, you can buy it in these small bottles. It goes from 16 ounces upwards. So if you want to buy a large quantity because you do a lot of deep pouring, this is your stuff. If you don't, then this is your stuff as well. So I'm going to do that in there with the deep pour. And a deep pour resin will take normally between 48 and 72 hours to cure. And that is because it has a lot slower exothermic reaction. And as a result, it allows it much more time to release bubbles. Even if you don't have a pressure pot, and I'm not going to do this in a pressure pot, it gives you a lot more time to release the bubbles. And also, it won't warp, dimple, and create a funny shape because it's cured really quickly. I'm also going to do this one with the J Diction 1-to-1 resin, and this is really too deep for a 1-to-1 resin. It is going to cure very, very quickly, probably within about 2 hours, because the exothermic reaction is going to be really quite strong. Going to trap any bubbles that are in there into it because it's too deep and it hasn't had time to release them, and it may warp. It may not, because this is actually a very, very good quality resin and a great price as well. But always use the right resin for the right thing. And then if you don't go on to social sites. I'm not talking about either of the resins I use, but lots of other resins as well, where people have been saying, oh, this is a rubbish resin. It isn't a rubbish resin, probably isn't as good as the ones I use, but it's because you've not taken the time to understand what you should be using. Or you do know what you should be using, but you're trying to get away with it, which, let's be honest, we all do that too. And this is really easy to mix up. It is literally a 2-to-1 ratio mix, which couldn't be easier. I always mark it on my jug what I'm going to mix up first. Now, I need to mix up a little bit more than what I would normally mix up because I've got a separate deep pour going on as well. So if I do 300 of part A, then it will need 150 of part B. So that is 2 times that to 1 times that. And I've got plenty of this because I use deep pour an awful lot. I'm going to be using my J Diction electric mixer for this because it just speeds it up, and especially when you've got a large volume. And the great thing is it doesn't add bubbles to it. Done a review on this already, and I'll link that video in the description below. Whenever you're using a mixer or anything like this, always make sure that you leave the blade in what you're mixing while you're mixing it, and don't turn it on until it's in it, because if not, it will splatter everywhere and make a mess. These do mix really well, and this is made of a really strong silicone. So that means that when you take it out, like I finished mixing, I can just give it a quick wipe over with a baby wipe and it will come clean. But if I do inadvertently leave some on it, I can just peel it off. This is the one I'm mixing up with the 3 times UV resin. It's a 1-to-1 resin, and this is the test one against the deeper pour one. As you can see, there are bubbles in it because we always get bubbles in it whatever we're doing. And I'm pouring it in slowly. I don't want to add any extra bubbles, and I'm going to do the same with this as I would any casting as well to try and release the bubbles. Massive thank you to all my members. Our membership area has grown beautifully. We have such a safe environment there now to share and to enjoy each other's work and to advise and help. My Facebook group for that is only open to members. So if you become a member, make sure you join that group. So now I've got the deep pour resin all poured in. Again, you can see there are a few bubbles. I wanted to make sure I'd got some bubbles in it because I definitely want to show the difference with this. I'm pouring this in at the same speed as I poured the other one in, and I will fill it right to the very top. Huge thank you to everyone that got me a coffee last month. I really do appreciate it. Without you guys, I couldn't keep this channel going. If you'd like to buy me a coffee just to say thank you for any of my videos, the link for that is in the description below. So giving it a little bit of tappy-wappy to dislodge any bubbles that I can and get them to come up to the top. Now remember, the deep pour one is a lot thinner, so those bubbles are going to come up and disperse a lot easier. And also because it takes longer to cure, it stays thinner for a lot longer. Going over it with my long neck lighter, as I always do. Remember, never a torch on a silicone mold because you will burn it eventually, and getting rid of any of those bubbles that have come to the top. And now what I'm going to do is leave these to cure up. And once they're cured up, I'll show you what they look like. So this is the one we cured with the 1-to-1 resin, and this is the one we cured with the deep pour resin. They're both very hard. Now, the 1-to-1 resin actually went into almost like an exothermic shock, and that was solid within about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And this one took the normal 48 hours to cure. Now this one I always spray a little bit of water into first because this is quite a stiff mold, and if not, it can be quite difficult to get out of the mold. But by adding a little bit of soapy water to it first, by spraying that in, it really does help. Where the other one, the mold is a little bit more flexible. So now we've got that out of the mold, it kind of shoots out once you put a little bit of water in it. Dry it. Now at first glance, that looks not too bad. But if you wanted to turn this into a lamp, unless this is the effect that you're going for, as you'll see, there is lots of bubbles in that. Now, it didn't distort too much, which was great, but it has trapped an awful lot of the bubbles in there. And most of them are stuck to the sides. They've not had time to release, so it's not ideal. Now, any larger than this, and it would really go quite warpy and probably ripply as well. So let's have a look at the one we did with the deep pour. I don't need to wet this one, although it does help if you do, but I don't need to. So that's that one. Now, I know it's difficult to see because it's a faceted one, but if I shine the light through it, look at that. There's hardly any bubbles in that whatsoever. In fact, I would say if you look at it from that angle, you can't see any real bubbles in there at all. There might be a little bit of imperfection in there, but that is all. And that is why it's really important to use the correct resin. The deep pour resin, especially if you're doing stuff that's bigger than this, will give you a much better overall result. And it's not expensive at all, and you can get it in lots of various different sizes as well. Now the other thing is, you are guaranteed every time with the deep pour resin, if you're doing something that's deeper than your average mold, to get a great result. Where this, if you use a 1-to-1 resin in a deep mold, it is very much dependent on luck on whether it's going to come out or not. So never blame the resin, only blame your choice. Hope that helps. I'll link everything in the description below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Be sure to check out the video that's coming up next. I think you'll really enjoy that one. Take care, enjoy your resin. Bye.